You followed every rule they gave you. You worked harder than anyone. So why do you feel completely replaceable, trapped in a system that never rewards you? Here's the secret they don't want you to know. Wealth isn't built with hard work. It's architected with a dark psychology of control they use to keep you obedient. They taught you to be a pawn. The question is, are you ready to learn how the king thinks? Before we continue, subscribe now to keep these videos coming, because only your support makes more content like this possible. They sold you a lie, the biggest one ever told. They said if you worked hard, followed the rules, and stayed obedient, you would be rewarded with wealth. And you believed them. You did everything right. So let me ask you, where is the money? Why do you do everything perfectly yet still feel utterly replaceable? Look around you. You see the masses, heads down, toiling in a system designed not for their enrichment, but for their control. Their obedience makes them predictable, and their predictability makes them powerless. They are cogs in a machine they did not build and do not own, trading their lives for a wage dictated by scarcity. They are trapped by fear and a consensus that keeps them running in place. This is the fundamental misunderstanding. This is the wall between you and real power. You think wealth is a result of labor. It is not. Wealth is the result of a mindset. True riches are not earned, they are architected. This is the psychology of the powerful, a strategic way to think that the rich have understood for centuries. It's a Machiavellian game of control, not a race of effort. You have been taught to be a pawn, but the rules you follow were written by the king. The question is, will you continue to obey, or will you learn to think like the one who controls the board? This programming begins in childhood. They taught you to raise your hand to speak, to stand in line, to follow instructions without question. This was not education, it was conditioning. The goal was never to foster your power, but to ensure your compliance. The masses internalize this lesson, equating obedience with security. They believe that if they follow the rules perfectly, they will be safe from risk and shielded from blame. This is the psychology of the herd, a deeply ingrained fear of standing out. But the strategic thinker, the Machiavellian mind, sees these rules for what they are, the invisible bars of a cage. He does not ask, what am I supposed to do? He asks, who profits from me doing this? He understands that every system of rules was designed by an architect to serve a purpose, and that purpose is rarely the liberation of those within it. Think about your own life. Who benefits most from your predictability? Your employer, the government, the market. Your obedience creates a world of scarcity for you and a world of control for them. They can set the price for your time because they know you will not break consensus. The true cost of staying in line is not the wealth you fail to acquire. It is the power you willingly surrender. It is the slow erosion of your will to think for yourself. This brings us to the first law of power. Be unpredictable. The masses cling to their routines with a desperate grip. They drive the same route to work, order the same coffee, and echo the same safe opinions they heard the night before. This predictability is their prison. It makes them a fixed asset in someone else's system, a known variable in an equation of control. Because they are predictable, their value is easily calculated and capped. They operate in a world of manufactured scarcity, forever competing for scraps within the established rules. The Machiavellian mind, however, thrives on the opposite principle. He refuses to be a known quantity. He cultivates unpredictability not for the sake of chaos, but for strategic advantage. He understands that a predictable opponent is a defeated opponent. He might change his methods overnight, shift his focus unexpectedly, or simply break a pattern for the sole purpose of unsettling those who think they have him figured out. This fluidity creates leverage. It shatters consensus and forces others to react to his game. Money and influence do not flow to the cog that always turns the same way. They flow to the hand that unexpectedly rearranges the machine. Now look at your own life. Where have you become comfortable? Where has your routine become a cage? In your career, your habits, your thinking, identify these patterns of obedience. They are the invisible chains that tether you to the psychology of the herd and lock you out of real power. This brings us to the second law of power, master emotion. The system has taught you to fear your own feelings. Be rational, they command. Logic is king. They convinced you that emotion is a weakness, a chaotic force that clouds judgment and leads to ruin. This is one of their most effective tools of control. By persuading you to sever your connection to emotion, they disconnect you from the very engine of human motivation, leaving you predictable and easy to manipulate with cold, sterile data. The masses swallow this lie whole. They worship reason and suppress intuition, believing they are making superior decisions when, in fact, they are simply ignoring the most powerful data stream available. But the Machiavelian mind operates on a higher plane. He understands a fundamental truth. Logic convinces, but emotion compels. He knows that people do not act on facts. They act on feelings. Fear, desire, envy, hope. These are the true currencies of power. While the pawn analyzes spreadsheets, the king architects a narrative that stirs the soul. He does not fear emotion. He wields it with strategic precision to inspire loyalty, incite action, and shape the consensus of the herd. So, stop trying to kill your emotions. Instead, learn to read them, in yourself and, more importantly, in others. What fear is driving their obedience? What desire is fueling their ambition? This is the true psychology of control. Master this, and you stop being a pawn in their logical game and start becoming the architect of their emotional world. This leads us to the third law of power. Decode the system. Do not obey it. The masses are conditioned to see rules as reality. They are given a manual, a job description, a social contract, and they follow it to the letter, believing the path is fixed and the walls are made of stone. They accept the game as it is presented to them, never thinking to question its design. This is the psychology of the pawn, forever trapped on the designated squares. The Machiavelian mind, however, understands that every system is an artificial construct. It was designed by an architect to achieve a specific outcome, usually the control and containment of those within it. He does not see walls, he sees a blueprint. He does not see rules, he sees code. And all code can be reverse engineered. He probes the system for its weaknesses, its forgotten backdoors, and its points of leverage. This strategic mindset is where real wealth is architected. It is found not by working harder within the defined system, but by finding the exploits in the system that bypass the work entirely. So, look at the systems that govern your life, your career, your finances, the market itself. Stop being an obedient user and become a strategic analyst. Who wrote the rules? What incentives are hidden from you? What loophole would shatter the entire structure of scarcity they have built for you? True power and the money that follows are not given to those who follow the map. They are seized by those who find the shortcuts. This brings us to the fourth law of power: control the narrative. The masses do not have a story, they are given one. They are passive vessels for the narratives fed to them by the system. Stories of scarcity, of imminent threats, of the dangers of ambition. Their reality is a script written by someone else, designed to foster fear and maintain a consensus of obedience. They believe these stories are truth, never realizing they are merely the most effective tools of psychological control ever invented. The Machiavelian mind refuses this poisoned chalice. He understands a profound secret. Reality is perception, and perception is shaped by narrative. He does not ask what the story is. He asks, what story serves my strategic interests? He then becomes its author. While the masses are paralyzed by a narrative of fear, the architect of power builds a new one. A story of opportunity, of destiny, of inevitable victory. Money, influence, and loyalty do not flow to the man with the best product. They flow to the man with the most compelling story. Think about the narratives that cage you. The story that you must be an employee. The story that wealth is for a chosen few. The story that your potential has a ceiling. Who profits from you believing these things? To seize power, you must first seize the pen. Stop accepting the story you've been told. Start writing the one you were meant to live. This brings us to the fifth and most fundamental law of power. Pursue personal sovereignty over social acceptance. The masses are addicts, hopelessly hooked on the approval of others. They crave validation from the very system designed to control them. Their entire sense of worth is outsourced, tethered to a supervisor's praise, a committee's consensus, or the fickle opinion of the crowd. This is their deepest fear. Not poverty, but exile. Not failure, but judgment. This psychological need to belong makes them predictable and keeps them obedient, trading their autonomy for the illusion of safety within the herd. They are rich in acceptance, but utterly bankrupt in power and freedom. The Machiavelian mind rejects this trait as the poison it is. He understands a critical truth. The moment you seek approval from the group, you surrender control to the group. He cultivates a fortress of internal validation. His ambition is not to be liked, but to be effective. His goal is not to belong, but to build. He willingly walks a path of isolation because he knows that consensus is the enemy of genius and the killer of strategic thought. The architect of wealth cannot be just another brick in the wall. So I ask you to imagine it. Picture a life where you answer to no one's judgment but your own. Feel the weight of their expectations evaporating. This is not selfishness. It is the ultimate act of self-possession. It is the core mindset required to break from scarcity. True wealth and lasting power are not architected by those who seek permission, but by those who have the courage to anoint themselves king. This brings us to the sixth law of power: weaponized scarcity. The masses are governed by a primal fear of lack. They see a dwindling bank account or a missed opportunity, not as a strategic problem to be solved, but as a judgment on their worth. This fear is the system's most potent tranquilizer. It keeps them desperate, obedient, and willing to trade their power for the illusion of security. They live in a world where scarcity is a wall. The Machiavelian mind, however, understands that scarcity is not a wall, it is a weapon. He knows that human desire is not driven by abundance, but by the perception of rarity. He does not fear scarcity, he architects it. He makes his time, his knowledge, and his attention strategically unavailable. This is not about hoarding resources, it is about manufacturing value. By creating a vacuum, he forces the world to rush in, and he sets the price for entry. Money and control do not flow to the man who is always available, but to the one who makes himself a scarce and coveted prize. So look at your own life. Stop viewing your limitations as a curse. That lack of resources you fear is the perfect raw material to build a narrative of exclusivity. Stop being a victim of scarcity and become its master. When you learn to control what is perceived as available, you stop playing their game of scarcity and start building your own empire of wealth. This brings us to the seventh law of power: build power, not wealth. This is the final distinction, the one the system works hardest to obscure. The masses have a fatal blind spot. They chase money as the ultimate prize, believing a fat bank account is freedom. They are profoundly wrong. A man with wealth but no power is just a richer pawn, a more valuable asset for the true king to sacrifice. His money is forever subject to the system's whims. A market crash, a new regulation, a shift in public consensus can erase it overnight because he still plays a game he does not control. The Machiavelian mind sees this trap from a mile away. He understands that money is merely ammunition. Wealth is a tool to be deployed, not a treasure to be hoarded. He strategically uses it to acquire what truly matters: influence, networks, and leverage over the levers of control. While the rich pawn buys a bigger, more comfortable cage, the architect of power buys the keys to the entire prison. He knows true security isn't just having a fortune. It's having the absolute power to protect that fortune from any system or man who would dare take it. Power is the permanent fortress. Wealth is just the furniture inside. So you must ask yourself, are you merely collecting expensive furniture, or are you architecting a fortress of control? One path leads to comfort, the other leads to destiny. This is the ultimate mindset shift that separates the man who serves the game from the man who becomes it. This brings us to the eighth law of power: abandon the consensus. The masses are terrified of a unique thought. They huddle together, echoing the same opinions on money, success, and security, believing there is safety in numbers. But this is a strategic illusion. Their shared wisdom is just recycled fear, a warm blanket that smothers genius. This consensus makes them a single, predictable entity, a slow-moving herd easily steered by the architects of the system. They trade their intellectual sovereignty for the comfort of not being wrong, never realizing that true wealth is found precisely where the crowd is absent. The Machiavelian mind knows that popular opinion is the most lagging indicator of truth. He understands that when everyone agrees on an asset's value or a career's safety, the opportunity has already evaporated. The real value, the asymmetric leverage, exists in the lonely spaces of contrarian thought. He is not a rebel for the sake of rebellion. He is a strategist who understands that new fortunes are not built by following the well-trodden road to riches. They are architected by carving a new one through the wilderness of independent thinking. So look at your own mind. Where have you outsourced your convictions to the herd? What popular truth about security and money have you accepted without a fight? You must begin the ruthless process of questioning every assumption the consensus has handed you. The first step toward building real power is to have the courage to think a thought all by yourself. This brings us to the 9th law of power. Transform fear into fuel. The system's most primitive and effective weapon is fear. It injects the masses with a paralyzing dread of failure, of loss, of judgment. This fear keeps them obedient, locked in a state of inaction, terrified to take any risk the system has not pre-approved for them. They see fear as a stop sign, a warning to retreat back into the predictable safety of the herd. It is the final chain that guarantees their servitude. The Machiavelian mind, however, understands the strategic alchemy of emotion. He knows courage is not the absence of fear, it is the strategic application of it. He feels that same cold dread, but instead of letting it freeze him, he funnels it directly into his engine. He uses the terror of remaining a replaceable cog to sharpen his focus. The anxiety of losing becomes a ruthless catalyst for action. His fear of dying a pawn becomes infinitely greater than his fear of failure. So confront your own anxieties. That knot in your stomach when you think about losing your money or security? That is not a weakness. It is a map. It points directly to the battle you must fight to achieve control. The masses are imprisoned by the things they are afraid to lose. The architect of power takes that same fear and uses it as the very fuel to build an empire. Every ounce of your dread is raw energy. You can either let it paralyze you, or you can use it to burn your path to the throne. This brings us to the 10th law of power. Architect your own security. The system has sold the masses a lethal definition of safety. They believe it is found in a steady paycheck, a predictable career path, and the approval of a supervisor. They trade their power for this illusion, clinging to their job title like a life raft, never realizing the raft is tethered to a ship they do not command. This is not security, it is dependence. Their entire world can be dismantled by a single memo, a market downturn, or a new boss. Their safety is a permission slip granted by the very system designed to exploit their obedience. The Machiavelian mind scoffs at this fragile arrangement. He understands that any security given by an external power can be taken away by that same power. He knows true security is not stability, it is adaptability. It is not a reliable salary. It is the power to generate wealth under any circumstance. While the obedient pawn worries about losing his job, the architect of power builds a fortress of skills, networks, and assets so formidable that no single event can threaten his foundation. This is the ultimate mindset shift. Stop clinging to the comforting cage the system provides. You must burn your life raft. True security, and the wealth that flows from it, is not found by being a valuable employee. It is found by building a world where you are the employer, the market, and the system itself. This brings us to the 11th law of power. Study the game of control. The masses are born onto a chessboard they do not even know exists. They believe they are walking their own path, making their own choices. In reality, they are pieces, moved by an invisible hand according to rules they did not write and do not question. Their entire field of vision is limited to the single square in front of them, the next paycheck, the next project, the next small approval. They obey the laws of movement because they are utterly unaware that they are pawns in a strategic war for power. The Machiavelian mind rejects this profound blindness. He forces himself to see the entire board. He doesn't just think about his next move. He studies the minds of the players controlling the game. He asks the forbidden questions. Who pulls the strings? What is their ultimate agenda? Why was this system designed this way? He understands that true power isn't in playing your position well. It's in decoding the psychology of the architects. This knowledge is where fortunes are made, because it reveals the exploits, the leverage points, and the future moves of the entire system. Therefore, you must become a student of power. Observe the dynamics in your workplace, in your industry, in every negotiation. Stop seeing them as isolated interactions. See them for what they are: tactical moves on a much larger board. Who holds the influence? Who profits from the consensus? Master this game of control, and the money you seek will become an inevitable consequence of your strategic dominance. This brings us to the 12th and final law of power. You do not follow the rules, you create them. The masses live inside a box they did not build. They accept the terms and conditions of their life without question. The career ladder, the social contract, the very definition of success. These are not laws of nature. They are the invisible fences of a psychological farm, designed by the system to keep the herd predictable and contained. Their slavish obedience to another man's code ensures they remain spiritually poor, forever playing a game designed for their containment, not their conquest. They believe freedom is choosing which square to move to next, never realizing they could burn the entire board. The Machiavelian mind, having mastered the game of control, takes the final strategic step. He refuses to be just a player. He becomes the lawgiver. He understands that reality is negotiable and that the most profound form of power is not winning by the existing rules, but architecting a new game with a code that guarantees his victory. He writes his own moral framework, his own financial principles, his own narrative of destiny. So I ask you, whose rulebook are you living by? Imagine a world where the limits on your ambition, the ones fed to you since birth, simply vanish because you declare them void. This is the ultimate psychology of control. You stop seeking money within their system and begin architecting a reality where your will is the only law that matters. This is how you forge true sovereignty. This brings us to the 13th and final law of power. Shape your own reality. The masses experience life as a spectator. Their world is a pre-built stage. Their actions a script written by the system. They live within a reality dictated by the consensus, trapped by a fear of what lies outside the accepted narrative. Their thinking is not their own. It is a cheap rental, furnished by others and designed for their containment. They believe the walls are real, never suspecting they have the power to tear them down. But the Machiavelian mind refuses to be a tenant in another man's world. He is the architect. He understands the ultimate secret of control. Reality is malleable. It bends to a will strong enough to impose a new design. He takes all the power he has amassed, the strategic thinking, the emotional control, the mastery of the system, and uses it not merely to win, but to build. He architects an existence where his vision is law and his ambition is the blueprint. This is where true wealth is forged. It is not a prize you win. It is the natural resource that floods into a world of your own making. The money you seek is simply a consequence of this ultimate control, a byproduct of true sovereignty. So begin now. Stop accepting the world you were given. Take up the tools of power you have learned and begin to construct the one you demand. Architect your destiny, without permission and without apology. This is the final victory. But do not think this victory comes without a cost. The psychology of power demands a price, one the masses are too terrified to pay: isolation. The moment you abandon their consensus, you will be branded a heretic. The obedient, trapped by their fear, will see your strategic thinking not as liberation, but as a threat. They will attack you, doubt you, and try to pull you back into the warm, predictable prison of their shared narrative. This is the system's final defense mechanism. It will use the voices of your friends, your family, and your own deeply ingrained conditioning to flood you with doubt. This resistance is not a sign that your path is wrong. It is the proof that you are finally breaking free. Every ounce of pressure they apply is a test of your new mindset. This struggle is the crucible where true sovereignty is forged. The wealth and control you seek are on the other side of this fire. You must understand this fundamental transaction. The masses trade their power for acceptance. The architect trades acceptance for absolute power. There is no other way. You must understand this loneliness. It is not a punishment, it is a symptom of your ascent. While the masses huddle together for warmth, sharing the same fears and the same predictable thoughts, you will stand apart. They find comfort in their consensus, a shared psychology that shields them from the terror of a unique idea. This is not strength, it is a strategic weakness. Their unity is the very cage that guarantees their collective containment. The architect of power walks a solitary path because his vision is his own. You will make strategic calculations that the herd cannot comprehend. They will call you cold, ruthless, or mad because they are judging your moves on a board they cannot even see. Their incomprehension is the proof of your elevated perspective. This is the burden of control, to see the entire game while being surrounded by pawns who see only the next square. So, embrace this solitude. Let it sharpen your mind. The silence is not emptiness. It is the space required for strategic thought, free from the noise of the system's programming. Every pang of isolation is a reminder that you have successfully broken from the consensus. This is the high cost of sovereignty, the necessary sacrifice. The money and power you seek are not found in the warmth of the herd. They are forged in the cold, clear, and absolute solitude of a mind that has dared to think for itself. But this solitude is not an empty kingdom. It is the throne room of your sovereignty. This is the ultimate reward for your strategic war against the consensus. Imagine it, waking not to the shrill alarm of obligation, but to the quiet hum of your own intention. The fear that once governed your every move, the fear of a supervisor's email, of a market downturn, of the herd's judgment, is simply gone. In its place is a calm, unshakable control. You will look upon the systems of the world not as walls to contain you, but as raw material for your own architecture. The frantic opinions of the masses become what they always were, distant, irrelevant noise. This is the real wealth, the true power that money only imitates. It is the absolute freedom to live by your own code, answering only to the blueprint of your own vision. Every decision is an act of will, every risk, a strategic calculation. This is the world that is forged when you master the psychology of control. A world where you are finally free from their game, because you have become the architect of your own. The laws have been laid out. The psychology of power has been decoded. You now stand at a precipice, and there are only two paths forward. One is the path of the masses, a well-trodden road of obedience that leads back to the predictable, comfortable cage the system built for you. A life governed by scarcity, ruled by consensus, and defined by fear. The other path leads into the wilderness. It is the path of the strategic Machiavelian mind, a path forged not by following the rules, but by understanding the psychology of the men who wrote them. This is the mindset that rejects the shared narrative and builds its own. It is the architect's way. So, the choice is final. Will you continue to follow their map, seeking their approval and accepting the money they deem you are worth? Or will you burn the map? Will you have the courage to reject their consensus and stand utterly alone in your own strategic thought? This is the ultimate test. You must now become the sole architect of your world, forging a reality where your ambition is the only code that matters. One path offers the safety of the herd. The other offers absolute sovereignty. There is no other choice. Decide. The fire has been lit. The choice has been made. But the war for your sovereignty is not won with a single grand declaration. It is won with 1,000 small, strategic victories. Do not attempt to burn their entire system to the ground overnight. That is the predictable rage of the pawn. The architect begins with precision. So, start here. Pick one rule you have always followed without question. Just one. It could be a piece of career advice from the consensus, a financial truth the masses echo, or a social obligation you fulfill out of fear. Isolate it. Now, apply the cold, strategic lens of power. Ask the forbidden questions. Who profits from my obedience to this rule? What fear does it weaponize against me? This first act of defiance is not about making money. It is about building the mindset that architects fortunes. It is the first time you consciously reject the psychology of the herd. This is your training ground. With this single act of intellectual rebellion, you begin forging the internal fortress of a king. The path to absolute power, to the wealth you desire, begins with the courage to break one link in the chain of your obedience. Do it now.